Hey everybody, welcome to Fugue Office Hours #1. Fugue puts engineers in command of cloud security with tools to prove compliance, eliminate misconfiguration, and shift left. With these office hours, we want to each one take a look at a job that you can do with Fugue. And my partner in this project is Ricardo Green, solutions architect here at Fugue, and he's going to walk us through essentially what is kind of the first use case that all of our customers kind of do with Fugue, which is like getting an initial sort of discovery and visualization of their cloud infrastructure environment. And today we're going to look at doing that with AWS. So welcome, Ricardo. How's it going?
It is awesome. Thanks a lot. So again, welcome everybody to our first office hours. This is exciting. So we're really going to take a look at getting started. So when you initially sign up with Fugue, this is the process that you will take to get your first visualization. We'll talk through that. How extensive it is within AWS, not a whole lot of work. We're going to knock all of that out right now. I'm going to share my screen and turn my camera off so that I don't have to stare at myself. So right now, what we're looking at is the main environment setup. So when you first establish your account with Fugue, you'll get brought into this to create a new Fugue environment. Let me take a step back. Before we even do that, I want everybody to see how we have things set up. So we have a free tier within Fugue, which is Fugue Developer, free for an individual engineer. So I encourage, if you have not already signed up, I would go through this process. It will allow you to visualize your cloud environment. You can start doing your checks for compliance and then start working towards bringing your environment into compliance with whatever standards that you're working with. But we'll go through this process of setting up the environment. So if you see here, you will name your environment, and we will call this Fugue Office Hours #1. Again, we are talking today about AWS. So you'll also see Azure here. We will be doing another office hours where we'll go through the Azure setup. Today we'll focus on AWS. You'll see we have an option here for GovCloud. So we are not going to do GovCloud today. So I'm going to select no. Right there. Our next stage is we're asking, are we going to include all the regions? So you have the option. So you can pick a subset of regions that you want to scan, and it really depends on the use cases. And we're going to go through a bunch of the different use cases in different office hour sessions. For this one, we're basically just going to select all the regions. So we're going to look at an entire account. So we'll select there. We also are extremely deep in the resources that we inspect at Fugue. We have a recommended list. The recommended list generally is any of the resources that have to do with compliance, that are specific compliance checks associated with them, will be included. And as you know, there's some overlap there when you start thinking about security and compliance, but we have a recommended list. So this is our recommended list. I'll expand that. Obviously not going to go through all of those in great detail, but you can see it's a substantial list. Or we can go through the process of picking and choosing all of the resource types that we want to inspect. We are going to go with the recommended list for now. We hit continue there. So almost done. So this is how we are going to be able to inspect your environment, the resources, the assets that you have deployed. This is done through Cloud Formation Stack. So you have the ability to go ahead and to launch this stack into your AWS environment. So if you have your AWS account logged in, it will launch it within the console. This is what that policy would look like. So you will see a number of things associated here. You have your assume credentials, which is with Fugue's account. You also have your external ID, which is an AWS best practice when it comes to security. So you want to have those things. This is required in order for the role to work. Generally speaking, we're using the security audit read-only policy, but there are a couple of inline policies that are in there as well. So you can view the template, or you just hit review that stack in the AWS console, and this will launch that stack based on what we just saw there. So you could also view this in the designer directly into the console. So this will give you that detail that I just talked about. Let's shrink that. So you can see exactly it's the same. And this is actually dynamically generated based on the resource types that you've selected. We have already gone through that process. So I actually just copied a role ARN. As a result of when you create that, you get this role ARN that's created. So we just copied that role ARN, and that's what we're plugging in here. We plug that in there. You'll also see, for those of you who are anti-console, we give you instructions and commands for doing it using the CLI as well. So we try to think that we've thought of everything. We recognize that there are a lot of folks that are anti-using the console. Others, want to use the CLI. So we've made that available to them. I'm just going to do that. I don't need to launch it because I've already done it. I've added my role there. I hit continue. In terms of the compliance families, we have this list of compliance families available to you. I won't read them all, but I will select them all. So I'm just going to hit yes, and we will be reviewing all of our compliance families. So in our environment review, we will see our name, we have our provider, we're looking at all of our regions, we have the resource types listed, my role ARN is there, and we're looking at all of the compliance families that are available to me. So I've selected all of those. Once we click that, we are good to go. So we are generating our environment. This generally takes a couple of minutes, especially for an initial scan when we are collecting all of the information. So we're going to let that go. Through the magic of the internet and television and preparation, I have created an exact duplicate of that environment. So we will take a look at that. For this office hours, we're not going to investigate completely all of the checks in terms of on the compliance side, but we're going to look at it from a visual perspective. So one of the things that Fugue does in making the API call and interrogating all of these different resource types is it creates a visualization. So now we have a map of everything that's in our environment. So I'm actually going to expand this grouping. And as you can see, now I'll enlarge that. We'll go full screen here. You can see that all of these regions here. So I've got all of my regions. A lot of these regions, I don't have a lot of infrastructure in there. But one of the great things about this visualization is I can see into Canada here, CA Central. Let's target that one. This is going to give us some level of discovery of orphaned resources. So what do I have out there? And this will allow me, as I zoom in, I can see that I have all of these empty VPCs here, but up here I have stuff hanging out in one of these VPCs. So here I can focus on looking at all the connected relationships here. So apparently I was doing some stuff up here. I don't know if these are active instances or not, but I'm able to see what subnets they're deployed in, what security groups. This is the sort of detail that's going to bring you closer into understanding what you have deployed from a compliance standpoint. Within this visualization, I also get specific detail in each one of these instances. So I can click into this, get details of the instance attributes over here, what size. Thankfully, it's a T2 micro, so it's not costing us a bunch of money. But I can get connected relationships. I see that there's public IP on this. So we can connect to it. Let's close that. But I see internet gateways, things like that, VPC configurations. Every one of these elements within this visualization is clickable. One of the big use cases, and we're actually going to not extend this office hours too long, but just we really want to focus on getting started. But what we can now do with this visualization and with our first connection with Fugue is we can go through our whole account and we can see where there are orphaned resources. you can see all of the connected relationships. I've got a bunch of container images in US East 1 that are hanging out there. I've got a bunch of Lambdas, really getting that sort of view into my whole AWS account, my environment, and then I can actually start the investigation. In future office hours, we're also going to talk a little bit more about the compliance portion of it, and that's going to get even deeper. But by clicking that button, I can start seeing all of this different red, and I will start seeing, where I'm non-compliant, where I need to actually focus some of my efforts and attention. So, really the goal of this was just to get us started, get a look at the visualization, understand what sorts of information is available to me as I start that journey into cleaning up my cloud environment, bringing it into, eliminating security vulnerabilities, as well as bringing it into compliance, whatever that compliance posture that you're looking at. But hopefully this was helpful for you, especially those that are just getting started, wondering, how difficult is it to get started with Fugue? Hopefully you saw that that is not difficult at all. We believe that we've taken a lot of the guesswork out of it, creating that role arm and that policy. We restrict those permissions to only be able to do the things that we need to do, which is examine configurations and to get that sort of information available to you. So hopefully you were able to follow along. Drew, I didn't know if there are any questions that we can answer before we close this one out, but we got some more office hours in the future that we're going to be doing as well.
A couple. One, would you mind just like click, I know we're going to get into the compliance reporting and details a little bit more, but just wanted to see if you could click on one of those violations just to give a little preview of the kind of information that our users get when they run these validations.
Yeah, absolutely. So each one of these will tell you, anytime in your visualization where you see one of these little red hazard symbols is a violation of some sort from a compliance perspective. So just clicking on this in terms of the VPC, this has to do with logging. So within AWS specifically flow logging, which is a violation of a number of different controls. There's some overlap in the interpretations there, but essentially it's going to tell you that, hey, you don't have a flow log established for this, and that's necessary to meet a compliance, these compliance controls. This also talks about the default security group, restricting traffic. So, many people don't know when you create your AWS account, you immediately get default security groups and default VPCs. They are non-compliant out of the box. So AWS hands them over to you, basically, allowing all, and you have to go in there and actually remediate those non-compliant assets as soon as you get them. But that's, those checks are going to point those out. And that's the type of information that you'll get in every area, wherever you see this non-compliant symbol.
Awesome. And yeah, one more. I wanted to just kind of get your take on the orphaned infrastructure problem. This is a topic that we've covered a lot, in blog posts and webinars and master classes and that kind of a thing. And it's obviously a pervasive problem that a lot of customers, enterprise size customers, small customers, on AWS, Azure, all kind of struggle with. And, just wanted to get your take on how, why the visualization tool is helpful in finding these things, whereas, other tools that might be available natively on the cloud platforms aren't maybe well suited for kind of how, our brains work, I guess, to find problems.
It's actually a really good topic and good question. So I'm actually going to pick on myself. So whenever we set these up or when customers build or set up the Fugue environments, this is probably the first thing they do. They scroll through to look at each one of the regions to see what's out there and how it's connected. And you kind of see, situations where maybe things are connected and that there's an environment that's set up, so you're not so worried about it. This is an active environment. So when I actually logged into here and I see this CA1 region, I do remember building this out for a customer, doing a specific customer example, and built this out. So, and I didn't tear it down. So technically, it is orphaned. It's sitting out there. What's always, what makes me nervous, just from an architecture perspective, is where I see these instances that are here, and I see an internet gateway. So I know that there's some level of connectivity to the internet. So that's just another kind of attack vector. Some way that somebody could get access to things. Now, I don't know what all the permissions are of these EC2 instances and what somebody could do if they were able to log on to one of these instances. What's really nice, though, is within Fugue, once we click in to get more detail, I can actually see some of the attributes of the instance. So some of the references, and it doesn't look like I have an association or a specific role policy that's associated with this instance. And that's typically where people would take advantage of it, basically looking at the policy and seeing what they can traverse throughout my account by assuming that role or policy. But it is, it is a problem. It is the cause of a lot of breaches. We have other customers that will create their visualization, and they'll see VPCs that are peer to other VPCs that they thought they deleted. And those VPC peers will have access into other VPCs, which have production databases on them. And, we know things that can happen if somebody gets a hold of database content or, any other sensitive information that's stored. So, orphan resources is a scary thing for anybody who's responsible for managing these environments. So being able to view those and to be able to kind of zoom in and see, what's there, what's the instance policy, are there public IPs associated with it? That's of huge value. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're running infrastructure in your environment, you're not aware of it, then you're not patching it, you're not scanning it for vulnerabilities. And so those things can kind of grow more dangerous over time. And yeah, they can be hard to spot in like resource lists in a console or in a spreadsheet. It's nice with this visualization that sometimes when things are wrong or they're not supposed to be there, they kind of stick out like a sore thumb. So
yeah, it's definitely, I mean, especially I'm a visual person. So when I can go through here and I can see like, extra circles that shouldn't be there, it makes it a lot easier. So I can pinpoint those things and really interrogate what's going on there and remembering the things that I've done in the past that I did not correct. So hopefully that's helpful to a lot of folks.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I think this was a fun session, our first office hours. And what do you think? Next session, we might dig a little bit more into kind of determining what your existing current compliance and security posture is, right?
Absolutely. Let's we'll dig into the dashboard a little bit more and then figure out how to start fixing these things as we see them.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, Ricardo, this was great. And until next time, Tuesdays at 4 o'clock, and go to fugue.co/go and get started with Fugue Developer. It's free, and give this a try yourself.
Yep. Thanks everyone. This was great.
Yep. Cheers.